Welcome back to Forgotten Trails, the podcast where we follow the cases that refuse to fade, the mysteries that families carry like stones in their pockets, waiting for the weight to finally lift. Imagine a Polaroid photograph, the kind that develops slowly, colors bleeding into focus, one chemical reaction at a time. In this one, taken on a bright Saturday afternoon in June 1997, a 16-year-old girl stands in front of a Dairy Queen, squinting against the sun. She's wearing an oversized flannel shirt over a white tank top, ripped jeans with careful tears at the knees, and worn Converse sneakers covered in ballpoint pen doodles. Her dark hair is pulled back in a messy ponytail. She's holding a vanilla cone that's already starting to melt down her wrist. Her smile is genuine, caught mid-laugh at something her best friend just said. That photograph, snapped by a disposable camera and later copied at a drugstore photo counter, became the last verified image of Sarah Marie Chen. 3 days after it was taken, on June 17, 1997, she disappeared from a suburban strip mall parking lot in Bellingham, Washington. No witnesses, no struggle, no ransom demand, just a car left running in a parking space, driver's door ajar, purse still on the passenger seat, and a girl erased from the world in the span of minutes. This is a story that stretched across 28 years. A story of a mother who turned her dining room into a command center, of a case file that outlived 3 lead detectives, of a single fingerprint that meant nothing for 2 decades until it suddenly meant everything, and of a woman found living under another name in a place so ordinary, so unremarkable that she had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Summer 1997. Bill Clinton was in his second term. Titanic wouldn't hit theaters for another 6 months, but everyone was already humming Bop, whether they wanted to or not. The internet existed, but most people still got their news from newspapers and the 6 o'clock broadcast. In Bellingham, a city of about 60,000 tucked into the northwest corner of Washington state, life moved at the relaxed pace of a place where mountains meet water and people still left their doors unlocked. The Chen family lived in a modest 2-story house on Eldridge Avenue, in a neighborhood where kids rode bikes in lazy circles until streetlights came on. Robert Chen, everyone called him Rob, was 44, a civil engineer for the county public works department. Dependable, quiet, the kind of man who mowed the lawn every Saturday morning and coached youth soccer even after his daughter aged out of the league. His wife Linda was 42, a high school English teacher at Sahome High School, known for her annotated copies of To Kill a Mockingbird and her willingness to stay after school to help struggling students. Their daughter Sarah had been born on November 12, 1980, the only child of parents who had tried for years before she arrived. Friends described Sarah as curious, artistic, a little quiet in groups but quick-witted one-on-one. She kept journals, dozens of them, spiral-bound notebooks filled with sketches, song lyrics copied from CD inserts, and the careful observations of a teenager trying to make sense of the world. She loved photography, had saved up for a second-hand Nikon camera, and spent weekends wandering downtown Bellingham shooting black-and-white film. She wanted to study photojournalism after high school, maybe at Western Washington University, maybe somewhere farther away. The summer of 1997 was supposed to be ordinary. Sarah had just finished her junior year. She worked part-time at a local bookstore, Chapters on Bay Street, shelving paperbacks and recommending titles to customers who appreciated her genuine enthusiasm. She spent evenings with her best friend Angela Martinez, driving around in Sarah's '89 Honda Civic, windows down, radio loud, doing nothing and everything the way only teenagers can. Tuesday, June 17, 1997, started like any other. Sarah woke around 9, ate cereal while reading the comic section of the Bellingham Herald. Her mother was already at a summer curriculum meeting at the high school. Her father had left early for a site inspection near the Canadian border. Sarah told her parents the night before that she'd be meeting Angela at the Bellis Fair Mall around noon, maybe catching a movie, maybe just wandering the shops. Standard summer plans. She left the house around 11:30 a.m. in her Civic, a light blue sedan with a Radiohead bumper sticker and a small dent in the rear fender from a parking mishap the previous winter. She wore the same flannel shirt from the Polaroid 3 days earlier, black jeans, her usual Converse. She carried a small canvas messenger bag with her wallet, keys, camera, and a dog-eared copy of The Bell Jar she'd been rereading. According to Angela's statement to police, Sarah never showed up. Angela waited at the food court entrance for 45 minutes, paged Sarah twice over the mall intercom, then drove to Sarah's house thinking maybe she'd mixed up the time. No one was home. Angela called Linda Chen at the high school around 30 p.m. Linda wasn't worried yet. Teenagers lose track of time. Maybe Sarah stopped somewhere, ran into someone. But by 6 o'clock, when Rob came home from work and Sarah still wasn't there, the worry began its slow crawl up the spine. Linda called Angela again, then Sarah's other friends. No one had seen her. Rob drove to the mall, parked near the entrance, walked the perimeter looking for the blue Civic. Nothing. They called the Bellingham Police Department at 7:42 p.m. The dispatcher took the information calmly. A 16-year-old girl, missing since late morning. The officer who responded, Sergeant Tom Callahan, was experienced enough to know that most missing teens come home within 24 hours, but something about Linda Chen's voice made him take it seriously from the start. The next morning, Wednesday, June 18th, a mall security guard doing his opening rounds noticed a car that had been in the same spot since at least closing time the night before. Light blue Honda Civic. Engine cold but unlocked. Driver's door not fully closed, just resting against the frame. He radioed mall management. They ran the plate. It came back registered to Robert Chen. Bellingham PD arrived within minutes. The scene was almost theatrical in its strangeness. The car sat in the southeast corner of the parking lot, far from any entrance, in a section that stayed mostly empty except during holiday shopping. The keys were still in the ignition. The radio was off. Wallet inside, $23 in cash, learner's permit, Blockbuster card, library card. The messenger bag was on the floor behind the driver's seat, camera still inside. Her copy of The Bell Jar wedged between the seats. There was no blood, no sign of struggle, no broken glass. The car simply looked like someone had pulled into a parking spot, opened the door to step out for just a moment, and never came back. Detectives processed the scene. They dusted for fingerprints, found dozens, most belonging to Sarah and her parents, a few belonging to Angela and other friends who'd ridden in the car. No witnesses reported seeing anything unusual. The mall security cameras from that era were primitive, grainy, recorded over every 72 hours. By the time police requested the footage, Tuesday's recordings were already gone. The investigation expanded immediately. Bellingham PD formed a task force. They interviewed everyone who knew Sarah. Teachers, classmates, co-workers at the bookstore, neighbors, the manager at Dairy Queen who remembered serving her the Saturday before. Everyone said the same thing. Sarah was responsible, reliable, not the type to run away. She had no boyfriend, no secret drama, no reason to vanish. Detectives looked into the family. They always do. Rob and Linda Chen cooperated fully, took polygraphs without hesitation, passed cleanly. Their marriage was stable, their finances unremarkable, their relationship with Sarah by all accounts warm and ordinary. There was no abuse, no hidden dysfunction. Just a middle-class family living a middle-class life. Flyers appeared on telephone poles across Washington state. Sarah's face, smiling in that Dairy Queen Polaroid, stared out from bulletin boards in grocery stores, gas stations, libraries. The description was heartbreakingly simple. Sarah Marie Chen, 16 years old, 5 feet 4 inches, 11-15 pounds, dark brown hair, brown eyes, last seen wearing a flannel shirt and black jeans. A girl matching Sarah's description was seen at a bus station in Seattle. Negative. Someone thought they saw her getting into a green pickup truck near the Canadian border. Negative. A hitchhiker resembling Sarah was spotted on Highway 5 heading south. Negative. Each lead was followed, each one dissolved into nothing. Bellingham sits less than 20 miles from the Canadian border, raising the possibility of international abduction. Agents interviewed truck drivers who regularly crossed at the Peace Arch border crossing. They checked with Canadian authorities. Nothing. Sarah Chen had not crossed into British Columbia, at least not through any official checkpoint. She turned the dining room into what she called the war room. Maps on the walls, timelines written in marker on poster board, copies of every police report, every witness statement, every tip called into the hotline. She organized search parties, canvassed neighborhoods, handed out flyers at shopping centers and rest stops. Rob kept working, but only because someone had to maintain normalcy, pay the bills, keep the house from falling into the chaos of grief. By autumn, the media attention faded. The case slipped from the front page to the back section, then disappeared altogether. New stories took its place. The world moved on, but Linda Chen did not. She kept the war room exactly as it was. She called the detective assigned to Sarah's case every Monday morning at 9. She updated the flyers every 6 months with age-progressed images created by forensic artists showing what Sarah might look like at 18, at 20, at 25. The years accumulated slowly, each one a new layer of sediment over the original wound. 1998. Detectives assigned to the case rotated out. New ones inherited the file, read the reports, pursued the occasional new tip, but the trail had gone cold long before they arrived. The Bellingham Police Department kept Sarah's case active, but active meant reviewed once a year, filed in a cabinet that grew thicker but no closer to resolution. In 2003, the lead detective at the time, a veteran named Ray Delgado, made one final serious push. He re-interviewed everyone from the original investigation. He brought in a FBI profiler to create a psychological assessment of potential abductors. He organized a cadaver dog search of wooded areas surrounding Bellingham. Nothing, no remains, no clothing, no evidence that Sarah Chen had ever been anywhere near those forests. Delgado told Linda Chen something that stayed with her for years. He said, "In cases like this, the person either didn't go far, or they went so far we'll never find them without help." Linda held on to the first possibility. Sarah was close, somewhere nearby, alive, but by 2005, even Linda's hope began to show cracks. Sarah's 25th birthday came and went. The dining room war room remained, but Linda stopped updating it as frequently. Rob, now in his early 50s, had grown quieter, more distant, as though some essential part of him had simply powered down. They stayed together, but the house felt like a museum to a life that had stopped in June 1997. Then came the procedural blow that felt like betrayal. In 2010, the Whatcom County Prosecutor's Office, in consultation with Bellingham PD, made the decision to administratively close Sarah Chen's case. Not solved, not forgotten, just moved from active to inactive status. The stated reason was resource allocation. The department had newer cases, cases with leads, cases where evidence still existed to pursue. Linda learned about the closure from a newspaper article. No one from the police department had called to tell her first. She drove to the station, walked into the lobby, and asked to speak to whoever had made the decision. A lieutenant came out, a man she'd never met, and explained the policy in bureaucratic language that meant nothing and everything. He assured her the case could be reopened if new information emerged. She asked him what new information he thought would emerge after 13 years. He didn't have an answer. Sarah Chen's name quietly disappeared from the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System active database in 2012. The family was notified by form letter. Rob Chen read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer. He never mentioned it to Linda. The years continued.
2013.
2015, 20 years since Sarah vanished.
2010.
Linda Chen was 62, retired from teaching, living in the same house on Eldridge Avenue. Rob was 64, also retired, spending his days tending a garden he'd never cared about before. They rarely spoke about Sarah in concrete terms anymore, but her presence remained everywhere. The bedroom upstairs unchanged,
The photographs on the mantel.
the silence that filled the spaces where her voice should have been. But while the case gathered dust in Bellingham, the world around it was changing. Genetic genealogy was revolutionizing cold case investigations. GODIS, the FBI's DNA database, had expanded exponentially. Fingerprint databases had gone digital, searchable across state lines in seconds instead of weeks. And perhaps most importantly, people were leaving digital footprints everywhere, small breadcrumbs of data that could be traced backward through time. In early 2023, the Bellingham Police Department hired a new cold case investigator, a woman named Detective Mara Yoshida. Yoshida was 39, originally from Tacoma, with a background in forensic accounting and a reputation for meticulous patient work. She'd helped solve 2 cold homicides in her previous department by tracing financial records that everyone else had dismissed as irrelevant. Yoshida inherited a filing cabinet of unsolved cases. She started with the oldest, working her way chronologically. Sarah Chen's file landed on her desk in late March 2023. It was thick, nearly 4 inches of reports, witness statements, evidence logs, and dead-end leads. Yoshida read every page. Then she read them again. One detail caught her attention. Something small, something that had been noted in the original evidence log but never pursued with modern technology. When detectives processed Sarah's Honda Civic in June 1997, they'd lifted numerous fingerprints. Most were identified quickly, but 3 partial prints, all found on the exterior of the driver's side door handle, remained unidentified. In 1997, that wasn't unusual. But in 2023, those prints could be run through the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, a national database containing over 150 million records. Yoshida pulled the original evidence cards from storage. The prints were still clear, well-preserved. She submitted them to IAFIs on April 12, 2023, not expecting much. Partial prints rarely returned matches. But she believed in checking every box, following every thread, no matter how thin. The response came back on April 19th. 2 of the 3 prints returned no matches. The third, a partial thumbprint from the door handle, returned a possible match, not definitive, but strong enough to warrant follow-up. The print belonged to a woman named Rebecca Hollis, flagged in the system from a 2019 DUI arrest in Portland, Oregon. Yoshida pulled Rebecca Hollis's records. Born April 3, 1981. Current age 42. Current address listed in Beaverton, Oregon, a suburb of Portland. Employed as a dental hygienist. No serious criminal history beyond the single DUI. No connection to Bellingham, Washington. No apparent connection to Sarah Chen. On the surface, it meant nothing. Rebecca Hollis could have touched Sarah's car at any point. Maybe she worked at a gas station Sarah stopped at. Maybe they crossed paths in a parking lot. A single partial print on an exterior door handle was not evidence of anything. But Yoshida ran Rebecca Hollis through every database she could access. Driver's license records, employment history, social media, and there, buried in a Portland Tribune article from 2020 about local businesses adapting during the pandemic, was a photograph. Rebecca Hollis standing outside a dental office, smiling at the camera, arms crossed, dark hair cut short, and a face that, when Yoshida laid it next to the age-progressed image of Sarah Chen at age 40, showed enough similarities to make her hands go still. The shape of the eyes, the slope of the nose, the way the smile pulled slightly higher on the left side. Yoshida didn't jump to conclusions. She'd seen too many false matches, too many faces that looked similar until you examined them closely. But she also believed in following instinct when it aligned with evidence. She called the Portland Police Bureau, spoke to a detective named Chris Tanner who worked cold cases in the metro area, explained the situation. Tanner agreed to help. Within 48 hours, Tanner had obtained recent surveillance footage from a traffic camera near Rebecca Hollis's workplace. Yoshida studied the footage frame by frame. Rebecca Hollis walked with a slight forward lean, hands often in pockets, the same posture Sarah Chen had in candid photographs from high school. Small things, probably meaningless, but they accumulated. The next step required delicacy. Washington state law allowed investigators to obtain a DNA sample from a person of interest in a missing persons case if there was reasonable cause. Yoshida drafted an affidavit outlining the fingerprint match, the photographic similarities, and the lack of any documented history for Rebecca Hollis prior to 1998. That last detail had emerged during a deeper record search. Rebecca Hollis's Social Security number had been issued in late 1997. Her first driver's license, obtained in California in 1998. Her first apartment lease, also California, same year. Before 1998, Rebecca Hollis did not appear to exist in any system. A Whatcom County judge reviewed the affidavit. On May 30, 2023, she signed an order allowing investigators to obtain a reference DNA sample from Rebecca Hollis. Yoshida and Tanner drove to Beaverton on June 6, 2023, 26 years and 2 weeks after Sarah Chen disappeared. They parked outside the dental office where Rebecca Hollis worked, waiting for her shift to end. At 5:15 p.m., a woman in scrubs emerged, carrying a canvas messenger bag, not unlike the one Sarah had carried in 1997. They approached carefully. Tanner showed his badge. "Rebecca Hollis? I'm Detective Tanner with Portland PD. This is Detective Yoshida from Bellingham, Washington. We need to speak with you about a missing persons case." Her face didn't change expression, but her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. "What case?" she asked. "Sarah Chen," Yoshida said, watching her closely, "disappeared from Bellingham in June 1997. For several seconds, Rebecca Hollis didn't move. Then she said, very quietly, "I don't know anyone by that name." Tanner explained they had a court order for a DNA sample. Rebecca could refuse, but it would complicate things. She could also cooperate voluntarily. Rebecca looked at both detectives. Then she said, "I'll cooperate, but I'm telling you, you're wasting your time." They took her to a nearby Portland PD precinct. A forensic technician performed a buccal swab. Rebecca signed the consent form without reading it. When they asked if she wanted to answer any questions, she said, "Not without a lawyer." They let her go. She walked out of the precinct, got into a white Toyota, and drove away. The DNA sample was sent to the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab in Olympia. Yoshida also submitted a reference sample from Linda Chen, obtained voluntarily the same week. Linda had trembled when Yoshida explained what they'd found, who they were looking at. "Is it her?" Linda asked. "We don't know yet," Yoshida said, "but we will soon." The lab prioritized the analysis. On July 21, 2023, the results arrived in Yoshida's email. The subject line read, "Chen case, maternity analysis complete." Yoshida opened the file. The conclusion was typed in clinical language, stripped of emotion. Probability of maternity, 99.999%. The DNA profile obtained from Rebecca Hollis is consistent with being the biological daughter of Linda Chen. Rebecca Hollis is Sarah Marie Chen. "Mrs. Chen," Yoshida said, "we found her. She's alive." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of 26 years of waiting, of hoping, of believing against all reason. When Linda finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Yoshida said. "The DNA is a match. Sarah is alive." She's been living in Oregon under the name Rebecca Hollis. Linda Chen made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob or both. "When can I see her?" That question opened a door into complexity that no amount of detective work had prepared Yoshida for. Because, while they had found Sarah Chen, they had also found a woman who insisted she was Rebecca Hollis, who had built a life under that name, who claimed no memory of being anyone else. The legal questions were immediate. Had Sarah been abducted? Had she run away and assumed a new identity? Was she suffering from amnesia? Or had something else happened? Something that fell into the murky space between victim and participant. Yoshida and Tanner traveled back to Oregon. This time, with a psychologist specializing in trauma and memory, Dr. Ellen Reeves, and a representative from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. They met Rebecca, now officially identified as Sarah Chen, in an interview room at the Portland FBI field office. Rebecca, Sarah, sat across from them. She had retained a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Valdez who specialized in identity cases. Yoshida spoke first. "You are Sarah Marie Chen, born November 12, 1980, reported missing from Bellingham, Washington on June 17, 1997. Your parents have been searching for you for 26 years. Rebecca looked at her hands. "I don't remember being Sarah Chen. I remember waking up in a hospital in San Francisco in August 1997. No ID, no memory of how I got there. The doctor said I had a head injury, possible trauma-induced amnesia. They kept me for 2 weeks. Social services got involved. I couldn't tell them who I was because I didn't know. They placed me in a group home. I was 17. I aged out of the system at 18. I worked, went to community college, became a dental hygienist. I built a life. You never tried to find out who you were? Yoshida asked. I did, Rebecca said. I looked at missing persons databases. I saw Sarah Chen's face. It didn't mean anything to me. I thought maybe I look like her, but lots of people look like someone else. I registered with DNA databases for unidentified persons. Nothing ever matched. Valdez, the lawyer, interjected. My client is a victim here. She lost her memory, her identity, her family through no fault of her own. Whatever happened in June 1997, she was 16 years old. The interviews continued for days. Dr. Reeves conducted cognitive assessments. Rebecca, Sarah, submitted to hypnotherapy, hoping to unlock buried memories. Fragments emerged. A parking lot, a sense of fear, a man's voice, but no face to attach to it, nothing concrete. The FBI opened a criminal investigation. If Sarah had been abducted, the perpetrator was still out there. Agents re-examined the 1997 evidence with fresh eyes. The fingerprint on the car door handle remained the only physical evidence, and it belonged to Sarah herself, likely placed there when she opened the door to exit the vehicle. Surveillance footage from the hospital in San Francisco where Rebecca first appeared was long gone. Patient records confirmed her admission in August 1997, listed as Jane Doe, suffering from head trauma and amnesia. But how she got from Bellingham to San Francisco, what happened in the intervening 2 months, remained a void. Linda and Rob Chen flew to Portland in early August 2023. The meeting was arranged carefully, mediated by Dr. Reeves in a neutral location. Rebecca agreed to meet them, though she told Valdez she still didn't feel like their daughter. They met in a conference room at the FBI office. Linda entered first. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Rebecca, her hand rising to her mouth. Rob stood behind her, silent. Rebecca stood awkwardly.
I'm sorry, she said. I know this must be hard.
Linda crossed the room. She didn't hug Rebecca, didn't touch her. She just stood close, looking at her face.
You have your father's eyes, Linda said quietly. I never noticed that before.
You were so young. Rob moved forward. He extended his hand, formal, careful. Rebecca shook it. They sat. For the first hour, they didn't talk about the disappearance. Linda asked about Rebecca's life, her work, her interests, her favorite foods, small things, Rebecca answered carefully, aware that every detail was a piece of a daughter this woman had lost. Then Linda pulled out a photograph, the Dairy Queen Polaroid from June 1997. She placed it on the table. Do you remember this day? Linda asked. Rebecca stared at the photograph, at the girl in the flannel shirt, the melting ice cream, the smile. She shook her head. I wish I did, she said. I wish I could give you that. Rob spoke for the first time. We don't need you to remember. We just need you to be alive. The criminal investigation continued through the fall of 2023. FBI agents interviewed everyone from the original case again. They looked for connections between Sarah Chen and anyone in the San Francisco area. They found nothing that explained the gap between June and August 1997. One theory emerged, tentative and impossible to prove, that Sarah had been abducted, held somewhere for 2 months, then either escaped or was released. The head injury could have been inflicted during the abduction or could have occurred during an escape. The amnesia could have been trauma-induced, the brain's way of protecting itself from whatever happened during those lost weeks. But without physical evidence, without witnesses, without Sarah's memory, it remained only a theory. By January 2024, the FBI classified the case as an unsolved abduction with a recovered victim. No arrests were made. No one was charged. The investigation remained technically open, but the active phase ended. Sarah, she had started using her birth name again, began the slow process of reclaiming her identity. She legally changed her name from Rebecca Hollis back to Sarah Marie Chen. She kept her job in Oregon but started visiting Bellingham regularly, spending weekends with Linda and Rob. The memories didn't return. Reeves explained they might never return, that the brain sometimes locks away trauma too severe to process. Sarah accepted this. She couldn't remember being 16. She couldn't remember the girl in the Polaroid. But she could build something new with the people who had never stopped being her parents. In March 2024, Linda Chen finally dismantled the war room. She took down the maps, the timelines, the flyers. Rob helped her pack everything into boxes and carry them to the attic. They left one thing, the Dairy Queen Polaroid, framed now, hanging on the dining room wall. Sarah visited in May 2024, nearly 27 years after she disappeared. She stood in front of the photograph, studying the face that was supposed to be hers. "She looks happy," Sarah said. Linda stood beside her. You always were." Sarah turned to look at her mother.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that.
Linda shook her head. "You're here. That's enough." As of January 2025, Sarah Chen lives in Portland and works as a dental hygienist. She visits her parents twice a month. She started seeing a therapist, working through the complicated grief of losing a past she can't access. Linda and Rob are learning to be parents to a daughter who is both theirs and a stranger. The case file in Bellingham remains open. Detective Yoshida checks it periodically, hoping that someday a witness will come forward, that technology will advance enough to answer the questions that still linger. What happened in that parking lot in June 1997? Where was Sarah for those 2 months? How did she end up in San Francisco with no memory and no one looking for her there? The answers may never come. She is found. And sometimes, in cases that span decades, that has to be enough. The girl in the Polaroid still smiles from her place on the dining room wall. She holds her melting ice cream cone. She doesn't know that in 3 days she'll vanish, that 26 years will pass before she comes home, that when she does, she won't remember any of it. But she's smiling. And somewhere in Oregon, a woman who used to be her sits at a coffee shop, drinking tea, thinking about parents she's learning to know, and a past she can't quite touch. The trail went cold for 26 years, but it never truly disappeared. It was always there, waiting in a fingerprint on a car door handle, in the quiet persistence of a mother who refused to believe her daughter was gone, in the small hope that time doesn't always erase truth. Thank you for listening. If there are families out there still searching, still hoping, still waiting for answers, know that the story isn't over until it's over. And sometimes, against all odds, the lost come home. Until next time,